Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it, presented by Rogue Matter. Download our podcast immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps or go to roguewavepodcast.com. That's W-A-V without the E. To subscribe on Apple Podcasts, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcast. Join the movement. Go Rogue. RogueMatter.com. Tonight, Mandalorian Chapter 14 reaction. Doc Ock is back for Spider-Man 3, is a Spider-Verse far behind, and Hollywood unloads on Warner Brothers. And we do this all alongside a very special guest. We have Cinementals podcast host, Mr. Stephen Hovecki, joining us. How you doing, sir?
I am good. How are you?
We are doing good. I am your host, Michael Dolce, as always, joined by my co-host extraordinaire, the Lord of the something, Mr. Hassan Godwin. We said live stream, and then you did a 180 last week, and you said back to Lord of the Radio. So I just covered all my bases.
What was the problem? So what was the disconnect then? What's your damage? The
disconnect is you can't keep just changing things on me.
I didn't. I never called myself the Lord of the live stream. That was you.
But
I never self-applied.
We went from a radio station to a live stream. So
that doesn't change. I've gone from job to job. I'm still Hassan.
Okay. Well, then we'll
call radio is a live stream after a fact, isn't it? Radio is a live stream.
Lord of the Radio. It's the LOTR. It's the Lord of the Rings. So I liked that. It was very
lots of interesting questions that you've.
So we'll just call you Loader for short.
Yes, you can call me Loader.
Okay.
Just don't call me
your GI. It's also your GI Joe name.
Loader. Yes, Loader. I'm not even gonna. All right, I'm done. I'm done for the show. Good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
That's what we like. It's been a good show.
That's what we like.
See everybody later.
That's what we like.
That was the day Rogue Wave ended. Who knew? Who knew? I didn't realize it was going to be that. I didn't realize the strings were tied together so loosely.
Right. and my box just closes and Steve's just moves over into my place and you guys just keep going.
Who knew the connection was so tenuous?
Which you should never miss the show, you out there. But the people that missed the show are going to come back next week and be like, Hassan, you look totally different.
You just start calling me Hassan.
Did you grow a beard, Hassan?
Yeah.
Did you grow something? All right.
You need to get some sun, buddy.
Yeah. I've been in for the entire all of COVID. It's
side effect,
crazy.
yeah, side effects to the lockdown. Is you go white. Who knew?
Hashtag Rogue Wave so white.
So we actually have a lot to talk about, which is exciting because we normally don't because it's COVID and we usually make up a lot of stuff.
Why do you always admit this?
Because I'm using this as my own personal grievance time. This is
he likes to be transparent.
And you have your gripes. So I just use this every week to kind of get that out of the way.
He wants to be transparent so that Mike can say he's trans.
Oh boy,
we won't go there.
Politics.
We will not go there. We'll take that. We'll take the chess piece off the board.
I will refer to you as Michelle if you wish.
We got Doc Ock back. We've got the idea of Spider-Verse. We got the Warner Brothers streaming thing. We got a lot of things we can actually talk about. The worst series finales of all time, which we're also going to do, which I'm pretty excited about. But I wanted to start with this. Based off of Mandalorian Chapter 14, the tragedy, all these people went online. I don't know if it's all these people, but people, comicbook.com did a whole article on it, and they raised the question, should Disney give Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni the keys to the Star Wars kingdom? Like, essentially, people are going bonkers now over the last, 2 episodes, I think, where, we've really gotten some real meat, maybe 3 if you count the Bo-Katan one, to where people are just falling out of their chairs, going nuts for everything that's happening in Mandalorian. And they're just saying, look, let's just make it official. And Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni should just be the Kevin Feige's of the Star Wars universe going forward. And I thought to myself, it's an interesting question, right? The obvious answer is yes. Mandalorian's a terrific show and everyone seems to enjoy it. It was an Emmy Award nominated show. So, I mean, it's getting critical praise as well as, fan service praise. But I bring up that last point and I wonder, it's something we've brought up over the last, this whole season, in fact. Do we like it because it's really that great. It's a solid show. We're not really arguing that it's a solid show. Do we love it because it's that great, or do we just love it because as Star Wars fans, it's just better than what we got in the movies?
What's the question? The question is, do we love it though? Right?
Is it actually great?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, yeah, I get it. But
do we love it just because it's better than what we got in the sequels?
Well, there's two different questions now. Is it great, and do we love it? Those are two separate questions. Like the first question to be answered is, do we love it? Right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems like it's a success. It seems like people love it.
It seems like I don't have facts, but I know it's true argument that people generally seem to like it.
Yes, the thing we always bump heads on about your preponderance argument.
People say they love it.
Yes, exactly. Who are these people? The same people who made you your breakfast. So now the question is why? Right? Then the next question you would want to ask is why you think they love it. Okay. And then what are your?
Let me take a step back though. You asked before you even answer that. You asked the question. Do we love it? Steve, do you love it? You don't.
Steve loves it.
Admittedly, I am not 100% up to speed on the show, but I will say that everything that I have seen of the show, I have enjoyed. I think they've done a really great job with this property in its format being, the first season was a little anomalous in the fact that you were bringing in entirely new characters in, and you didn't have to worry about anything other than connecting to the Star Wars universe peripherally, having stormtroopers around, having titles that matched up with existing characters. And I think that so far they've been very successful. This season, again, very successful from what I know of bringing in characters that are definitively part of the Star Wars canon and now bringing them into the live universe as well. And I think that, it's not a question of handing them the keys to the kingdom. It's a question of, and I don't think that at any point, any property as large as Star Wars should necessarily be only in the hands of certain guys. Yes, Kevin Feige is certain that's an anomalous situation, but the fact of the matter is he started that whole Marvel MCU thing from the ground up. It was him. He was an architect and built it to a plan. Very successful. And I don't know that. I mean, if George Lucas was a better writer, I think that that's the guy who you would want to have been architecting this all along. But I think that the fact that they've allowed so many people to play in that sandbox, it's hard to come in the third quarter and just hand the reins over to any single entity and say, you now have complete control over this universe. Hassan and I feel very strongly about how good the Solo film is. And there's a lot of people who consider Rogue One to be the best Star Wars film outside of the original trilogy.
But that it's funny you bring that up though, because that movie is another example of what made that the best Star Wars movie. The last 10 minutes, at least for me.
I don't know. It was the last 10 minutes. It's a solid movie all the way through. It's entertaining. It doesn't get boring. It's a good story.
It's everything lots
of great characters.
It's everything the Force Awakens tried to be. Right, but it was all the nostalgia was done right. First of all, they gave it an actual story. There was a goal for all these new characters. There was an objective. There was the stakes. They interjected the stakes. It wasn't like the Force Awakens always felt like Star Wars light. Like, oh look, they've got a Death Star. All we have to do is go shoot at it, and it'll blow up. Or, I mean, none of the perils that were in the original trilogy or whatever are present.
Right.
In the, even the Death Star run was a long shot, right? And they painted that as like, okay, look, this is probably not. And the guys in the briefing are like, this can't. Nobody can do that. That's not going to work. It's painted that way, even if it's a throwaway line. So like,
you got to shoot a torpedo into a hole the size of a pizza box.
Yeah, exactly. From going at what's got to be like 100,
going at 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Pizza on Tatooine, Mike. Don't add to it. So anyway, there's
I'm very valid with what I just said.
there are stakes. I know. You stand by most of lunacy that you talk about. There are stakes in Rogue One. Like, okay, we got to get these plans to everybody else. That's done, right?
Yeah.
And so then everything is this plan's not going to be simple, not going to be as easy as we think, and then the perils stack and stack and stack and stack. That's a simple way. That's a simple story device.
Right.
That the entire sequels just decided not to employ. They just didn't do it. Except, okay, maybe in the Last Jedi, it's like, oh, the fleet's running out of fuel in 6 hours, even though it's been 3 days while Rey has been on Octo and 2 days since Finn and Rose have been on Canto Bight. But we only have 6 hours or 16 hours or something like that.
We didn't know that.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I'm saying. So it just every attempt that they make to set up some kind of peril, they negate it by trying to do, using the rule of cool, right? Well, this would be really cool if we saw, and that doesn't work. The rule of cool is a bad writing tool. So, and whereas I do somewhat agree with Steve on the fact that no one person should be handling the entire this broad universe. Mm-hmm. There should be at least one person or a small committee in charge of the continuity.
I agree.
of the lore, because nobody can seem to agree what the Force is, how strong anyone is with the Force, what it takes to learn the Force, what is the training? What is Jedi training?
It feels like it's almost a lazy question too, right? Because not the question itself, but the response to the question. You could imagine executives sitting in a room like Kathleen Kennedy being like, it doesn't matter. But meanwhile, like, this is a hardcore fan base that sits there and is like,
well, you know what's so funny about
it
that?
Matters.
What was so funny about that is from the beginning, Lucasfilm was dead set on maintaining this timeline and canon for every single book, for every single comic series, for every single project that came along, video games, everything that happened. They were dead set on keeping it on a logical timeline through history and maintaining this, to sort of build that canon. And for them to come back now and just kind of like arbitrarily throw stuff at us and say, well, it just seems so out of character for them, for someone who's been so controlling of that IP for so long.
Well, I mean, once you sell the keys to the kingdom, I mean, that's it.
Your story shouldn't have questions that spring up retroactively, right?
Right.
So if like you can put your hand to someone's wound and heal it, then why is Qui-Gon Jinn dead?
Why is
there's certain things that are like, well, why and then it's like, oh, well, Luke didn't, Obi-Wan didn't know that technique. Okay, so then how does Rey know it?
And why is Darth Maul a spider? I don't get that.
Well, that was in the cartoons.
Yeah,
I know.
But the cartoons are canon.
That's what I mean.
That's why your lore is suffering, Mr. Dolce. Because
Hassan, we're even starting with the most basic question, though, right? The most basic question.
What's the most
if at the end of the last film, everyone's going this way, how come everyone's now going this way, starting, at the beginning of the next film? Everyone get back to me. I want to report back. Everyone retreat. And then start of the next film. We've got them. What?
Yeah.
I missed that. Like even just basic continuity of what happened at the end of the last film, Force Awakens, to what happened at the beginning of Last Jedi would be really helpful to have a key voice, overseeing it.
Yeah. No, you got to read the book. You got to read the novel.
Well, yeah. Apparently, there was a movie within a movie that
read the book, you heathens.
Yes.
What are we living in medieval times? Books.
Look at you. Speaking of reading a book, there's a new book coming out, Star Wars Archives, that provides new details about George Lucas's original plan for the Star Wars sequel.
I have that on my queue.
Yeah. So what?
Expensive though. It's an expensive book. Pricey.
Yeah. Well, it's brand new hardcover. You'll be able to get it.
$100. That's pricey for a book.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, printing costs, a little higher than.
That's not my problem. I'm not taking that responsibility. I just want the book, man. I don't want the troubles.
So
go ahead.
In the book, the biggest revelation is that Lucas intended to resurrect Star Wars: The Phantom Menace villain Darth Maul, and turn him into the main antagonist of the trilogy. He would appear with mechanical legs and become the godfather of crime in the universe because, as the Empire falls, he takes over. And he trained a girl, Darth Talon, who was in the comic books as his apprentice. She was the new Darth Vader, and most of the action was with her. So these were the main two villains of the trilogy. It was teased in the Star Wars film franchise in Solo, a Star Wars story. And the villain was revealed to have not only survived the events of Phantom Menace, but also to have climbed the ladder of organized crime in the galaxy as the superior to Crimson Dawn syndicate boss Dryden Voss. It's presumed...
Which just means that the article writer didn't watch the Clone Wars, because all that is explained.
What, in the Clone Wars?
Very vividly, yes.
Oh, well, but you know what? For the movie, they probably would have re-explained it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like to never mind. But I mean, Lucas was behind the Clone Wars, so
right.
he essentially did most of that stuff in the Clone Wars.
Right. So I mean, I'm sure there would be a brief mention of something, because Lucas would be, I think, hopefully, would care that you're caught up in case you have not seen the Clone Wars. So, but also in the trilogy plans, Leia was the chosen one. Because just as the original Star Wars trilogy focused on Luke, the sequel would focus on Leia. The movies are about how Leia, who else is going to be the leader, is trying to rebuild the Republic. Luke is trying to restart the Jedi. He actually also used an analogy to like the Iraq War. It's like, okay, we remove this big boss. Now, how do we actually build a Republic? All very interesting questions that could have been brought up. And I feel like in the talented hands of different directors, maybe like J.J. Abrams, could have ran with that. I mean, JJ basically had everything kind of handed to him, and they decided.
And he blew it. J.J. Abrams is not a talented director, in my opinion.
I think he's talented enough.
There's visionary people, and you guys.
I think he's a good idea guy, but that's.
Maybe. But a lot of his ideas are rips of other things, like blatant rips. That unfortunately.
I think he needs people around him, much the same way what's his face always claims that he's not a good. So what's his name? That said he's not a good writer by himself. Was that Abrams or was that Lindelof? Yeah,
Lindelof. Right. That son of a
you bastard.
The Emmy award-winning Damon Lindelof.
I know. There's no accounting for taste. I know.
There's you know what? You know how many awards Lucas has won, and you still run them down, dude. So I don't want to hear your equivocations, man. It doesn't matter. Do not try that.
He's stepped up his game. He's on the upswing.
Lucas, $4 billion. Yeah, right. So that makes him worthy. That makes your argument invalid. Your arguments are all invalid.
What argument that Lucas doesn't know?
Every argument you've ever made since I've been on this show
about the prequels.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes, makes it all invalid, dude. All invalid by your logic.
4 billion.
By
your logic. Your arguments about anything invalid.
We didn't say whether or not he was a successful director. We just said whether or not the prequels were any good.
No. Your logic was that because in my statement about David Lindelof, right? Not
David
being
Lindelof? Is that Damon's brother? David?
Whatever. Now you're just parsing. Right.
Go ahead.
Damon Lindelof, right? I can't say that guy's last name. This is always a. Huh? Am I doing fine?
It was the first name. That was where I was like,
we know who you're talking about.
Go ahead.
I'm done. Because you're being a dick. So I'm done.
Can't bing you for that one.
Nope. Because you're being a dick.
Knowing it's half the battle.
Hassan, what are your
No, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
This is going to be an interesting show.
This happens every show.
In keeping with the Dave Filoni, John Favreau, what are our thoughts on Boba Fett and Chapter 14, The Tragedy? Again, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but it's been out for a week already, and we got Friday's installment coming.
The internet's got spoilers up 30 minutes after the show airs, so I mean, people are jerks.
Well, you got to watch it at 3 a.m. like I do.
That's right. That's right. Everyone should wake up at midnight Eastern time when it goes on, when it comes live, and just,
I mean,
all this silly waiting around.
A true nerd knows this.
Is it 9 p.m. then on Wednesday night or Thursday night for?
Is it 3 a.m. when it comes on? Is it?
I would think it'd be 3 a.m.
midnight Eastern or midnight Pacific.
Yeah, for the Pacific.
They drop at 3 a.m.
Okay.
Like California people could absolutely, I could easily stay up till midnight to watch it if I lived in California. Like that's not hard.
Okay.
But I'm saying
you don't.
We're
you don't
shafted.
have,
We're 3 a.m.
You don't have. No, not really.
I'd have
It
to set
depends
my
on
alarm.
your level of dedication.
I guess so. It's very true. It's very true.
Because it's actually easy. All you got to do is be awake and turn your TV on. So it's not a hardship.
3
It's
a.m.
just that you don't want to
I'm
be
not-
awake at that
I
time.
hope I'm not awake at 3 a.m.
Fine.
This is older self. Me.
I was awake at 3 a.m. last night.
I mean, this is older self.
Always
this is
awake at
older
3
self
a.m.
me saying this though, because like younger, like 20s Mike, or even like early 30s Mike would be like, I'd still be at the bar. Come right home.
These days, I'm looking at 3 a.m. I'm like, ooh, still early.
That's right.
It is though. It is also early. It is also early at the exact same time. All right, but coming full circle here with the Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau. Are you the last episode? I think is the one that's really sent people into that stratosphere for these two guys. What was your take on the episode? What was your reaction to this episode?
I thought it was a good episode. You know, I thought it was going to be another filler episode, and it turned out to be more eventful than I thought it would be. So that's good. It's another really short one, so that's infuriating.
Well, I actually like that. Easy to get through.
But we're talking about me right now. So anyway,
is true. This is true.
So the other thing is, you know, I mean, look, there were a lot of pivotal things that happened in the episode, so that's kind of cool. Set up the stakes for the next two shows, so that's kind of cool. We'll see how they wrap it up. It's really it's a linchpin episode.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode in itself can be judged on the actions and the merits of what went on in the episode, but it wasn't really much of a story,
right?
You know, he took him to his rock, he put him on his rock. And he didn't, and then he waited, you know, and then wackiness ensued while he was waiting for the kid to take a dump on this rock, right? So that's basically the gist of the whole story. There's not really much to comment on except for some of the superficial things that I have seen people complain about, about the episode,
because we're all about superficial here. So
Boba Fett needed to go on the keto diet. You know,
he looked a little big. Yeah, no, it's harder to lose. It's easier to gain weight and harder to lose weight when you get up there in age. So that's
all right.
Is that
it's not? It's not hard though to hire a stunt actor to wear a suit since your character's wearing a mask. You know,
good point.
That's not hard. That would be easy.
Point taken. Another reason why we shouldn't give the keys to Jon Favreau.
If I do not know if Jeremy Bullock was still alive, but it would have been cool if they had gotten Jeremy Bullock. Huh? All right.
Did I just kill him? Let me see. Hang on.
Yeah, we could have checked.
I do like the stunt director of the week.
Oh no, he's
aspect of that. I like the idea that a lot of the very talented directors are getting their chance to to put the Star Wars universe on their resumes by doing these episodes of the show. I understand there's a little bit in visual continuity, but I think so far that really hasn't shown itself to be a problem yet in having a different sort of very auteur style directors coming in each week to do an episode hasn't been a detraction. So
it's the essence of Star Wars, technically, if you look at the original.
I agree. I agree.
So yeah, and because they have because the story they kept the story simplistic, and they do seem to have a tight continuity, at least with the mythology of the Mandalorians versus the overbroad mythology of the Jedi. They've managed to keep a nice through line so that even if you do have a visually different director from week to week, it's still the same. It's still you still know you're watching the same show. Right. Jeremy Bullock is still alive, by the way. He's 75 years old.
I was going to cut in. He's still alive, but Jason Wingreen, who is the actor who provided the voice for Boba Fett in the original.
But we don't need him. We need the physicality of the look of Boba Fett, and then we can have Tamura's head. Yes, and then we can have Tamura's voice which is a continuity change. And that's fine. That's kind of what they do because a guy in the Mandalorian suit is not Pedro Pascal 90% of the time. So
don't
he's a stuntman.
I really thought.
He's breaking down the wall.
You're supposed to know these things, showrunner. You know,
it's like Santa Claus. I want to believe.
There you go. We want to believe Pedro Pascal's under that helmet all the time.
You know what? You know what I was thinking when I watched this episode.
Don't know
Though
why
I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know what you mentioned, like the through line, and in the past we've actually been kind of a little critical of the show in the sense that not necessarily of the show, but it's a week to week format. So we've been critical of the critics, essentially kind of bashing that. And it was made, season 1 was made for a Monster of the Week kind of episodic, traditional television show. This season, I feel like I'm very curious how it will feel watching it all in succession. Because the only thing that I thought was a little strange was we have not heard or seen anything from Moff Gideon, since the beginning of the season. And then all of a sudden, since last season, sorry. And then all of a sudden, he's just already like hot on the trail. And Agent May kind of comes out and is like, "Oh, the bounty tripled on that little guy." And it's like, I guess so, because they mentioned it last episode, but it was one of those things where it wasn't really brought out to prominence early on in the season. It almost felt like Mandalorian should have known better that he's still kind of wanted and still on the run. They only mentioned. It never seems like a legitimate threat until this episode when all of a sudden, boom, there's the spaceship, and there, and there's, there's.
The Mimban in 2 episodes ago put a tracker on the ship, which is why they know exactly where he would be.
No,
and
I get that.
Boba Fett's been tracking him since the beginning of the season,
right.
So.
But that's my point, though. This is the first time where Mandalorian, I feel like, finally is like, oh crap, I guess I should have been more careful. In a sense where, in season 1, there's always this element of people are after the child. He knows it, and he's much more cautious. I think he's been a little more reckless this season. But again, I want to know. I would love to see it in succession. Steve, what were you going to say?
I have a quick question, and I'm sure that I've heard this somewhere already. Where in the timeline of the films does the Mandalorian take place, or are we supposed to know
What's
that?
it, 5 years later?
5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
After Return of the Jedi. So
Yeah.
this is before any of the sequels.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
The fans' hopes is that it somehow ties into the sequels so that the sequels actually make sense.
Not all fans.
I don't
Not
see
all
how
fans.
They,
Because
I
I'm
don't
reading
see
a
how
lot
they
of
could. I would have to see the hard time them coming back
Yeah.
and delivering anything that would make the sequels make sense. I shouldn't say make sense. I should say make them a better thing than they are.
Yeah. Also, that's kind of a ridiculous parameter to put on the show to try to make 3 movies. The movie's responsibility to themselves were to make sense. The show shouldn't be responsible for trying to make 3 incoherent movies make some kind of sense. All the show really has to do, because it's coming coming on the heels of the first 6 movies, is just be respectful for of the first 6 movies, and it shouldn't really be too reverent of the because there's not a lot of lore in the sequels.
Right.
Right.
So let me
not much that they have to live up to. There's no Mandalorians in it. Sorry.
If this is 5, that's all right. No, I interrupted you. If there's 5 years after Return of the Jedi, so how many years are there supposed to be between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens?
30, right?
30 or 32.
Yeah.
30?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 30 years later.
That doesn't.
I think
seem right.
30 or 36 years later, actually.
Yeah, it could be.
So so probably like you would say 30 years from Mandalorian, from the time from the events of Mandalorian comes the Force Awakens. Because remember, like Han Solo's got to go from 30 to 80 to almost to in his 70s, and the age of Luke Skywalker, like he's the boy king in Return of the Jedi, and he's the old disillusioned man.
Yeah, no. I guess that's right. I for some reason I just always felt like they were a little bit older than they actually were in Return of the Jedi by the time that wrapped up. So I adding 35 years seemed like they would put them into their 80s or 90s, which would be like the Force's doddering. But I don't. I guess it makes sense. So I mean, they've got some time to fill. I mean, in other words, they've got some space to play with. So
yeah, and let's be honest, the Mandalorian's probably not going to last more than 5 or 6 years in and of itself, right? I mean, just by the nature of the way things work these days, shows work.
Yeah.
Nobody goes for the supernatural phenomenon, right? To 14
Yeah,
seasons.
right. 15.
So yeah.
The other thing about
15.
it, you're probably right. It is going to go 5. It's going to be a creator decision. Obviously, it's going to be Jon Favreau saying, "I've done everything I need to do," and blah blah blah. But to speak to that, there's a couple things they could fill in The Force Awakens, and Rise of Skywalker and everything, which is obviously how does Palpatine come back, the specifics.
Listen,
the clone.
As far as story content, I mean, the world's their oyster. If they have someone with half a brain over there, they could generate any number of.
Are we going to meet Rey's
stories.
parents? Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why?
Palpatine's son. They have
Even
fodder.
have to. Why would you throw that in there though? Why would
I'm
you
just
throw
saying,
those?
Again, these are just examples.
Fan
of
service.
Things, not fan service. I actually, well, maybe it is maybe it's fan service or fan disservice. The way depending on your opinion of the sequels. But I'm just saying, in terms of bridging the gap to the sequels, they do have things and elements they can do, and they've done a nice job of bridging the gap of the Clone Wars to this, right? I mean, by bringing back characters, even having Rosario Dawson kind of last week mention, where's Admiral, whatever. I'm a geek,
Thrawn.
so I don't. Yeah, so there's.
Yeah, you're not a geek, dude. You think you are, but that's. Okay.
I like the movies.
You're,
I never
you're
got
a
into
game,
cartoons.
you're a game show host, dude. That's what. That's your position.
And a darn good one. My mom still asks me, when are we doing Jeopardy again? She's like, when's Jeopardy coming back on? All right.
That's your ambition.
Michael
I know. She's
But Thrawn is from the expanded universe. He's from the books, so they're actually bringing some of the Legends canon into, but they've also brought him into Rebels, which is another thing. So
so
it's a thing. It isn't.
What do you guys think? What was your take? Did we enjoy Boba Fett? Did we enjoy everything the Mandalorian is? Should we give them the keys to the kingdom? Let us know in the Facebook feed. We will attack you, and agree with you.
Hey, wait, and I apologize because
we're more than happy to tell you why you're wrong.
I personally am not body shaming Boba Fett. I'm just saying that was a comment.
I'm in no position.
Yeah, me neither. I don't want to leave that as a dangling, comment
Participle.
on my part.
Yeah, I was gonna say participle, but then Hassan would have yelled at me.
Yeah, I decided not to. Never mind. I'm done.
All right.
I'm done.
When we come back,
Not okay.
Rogue Rage.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.